we're excited to announce that the next Tesla Gigafactory will be in Mexico near Monterrey. So super excited about it.
Will have a profound impact on inflation, on the well-being of U.S. households. There's an estimate that these tariffs, if they remain in place for over a month or so, will start costing each U.S. household $830 in extra taxes.
Could temperature-sensitive produce vanish from American supermarkets if Mexico slams on the brakes? That question is no longer a far-fetched doomsday scenario. It's a very real possibility looming over every U.S. household.
Yeah, the private labels are just as subject to the tariffs as the big-name brands.
In March 2025, the White House expanded tariffs on Mexico and Canada, plunging North America into a dangerous standoff. Economists warn this conflict might detonate a shockwave that rattles not just Wall Street, but the everyday grocery aisle too.
But is anyone willing to blink? Or are both sides locked on a collision course, with the shelves of ordinary families caught in the crossfire? Buckle up. In the next 10 minutes, we'll uncover the hidden webs of power, pride, and peril fueling a trade war that threatens to rewrite the rules of who pays and who profits.
25%. That's the new tax slapped on nearly every good crossing the southern and northern borders into the United States. Announced abruptly on March 4th, President Trump invoked extraordinary executive powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, allowing him to impose indefinite tariffs without waiting for Congress. According to a White House fact sheet released in early March, officials argue these measures are necessary to fight drug trafficking and secure the southern border. But critics use words like reckless, devastating, and self-defeating. One prominent investor even branded the move an act of war. Trump's bold claim, if they show us teeth, they're going to pay the price, crackles with defiance. Yet on the ground, the fallout is instant. A Texas auto parts manufacturer reports production costs soaring by 30% within days. Restaurants and retailers brace for price hikes on fresh produce.
This is not something that's going to have a good effect for consumers anytime soon.
Markets feel the chill. U.S. stocks wobble on fears the conflict could spiral out of control. Could these tariffs truly protect American interests, or could they backfire on Trump's own voter base? The numbers are startling. U.S.-Mexico trade alone tops $800 billion per year, more than double what it was a decade ago. The automotive sector commands a large slice of that money. According to Kiplinger, in April 2025, at least $150 million in electric vehicle components cross the border every month. With so much money in the balance, the political blame game across borders is fierce. As anxious consumers wonder if groceries and gadgets will soon cost a fortune, a bigger question looms. Is this just the beginning?
What are people with low salaries going to do? If we used to eat meat twice a week, now we'll have to cut back to once a week. Or maybe we won't be able to afford it at all.
Before the ink even dried on the U.S. tariff announcements, Mexico mounted its counteroffensive. President Claudia Sheinbaum, riding a wave of populist energy, declares, "This time we will not be the ones to back down." It's a fiery statement meant to rally a nation that has long felt overshadowed by the United States. In Mexico's view, turning the other cheek is no longer an option. According to recent data, Mexico supplies over $35 billion in agricultural goods to the U.S. each year, critical produce like avocados, tomatoes, and peppers. Sheinbaum threatens to freeze or heavily tax these exports if the White House doesn't reconsider. The stakes become painfully real when economists warn certain EV parts could vanish from manufacturing lines if full retaliation kicks in. The supply chain, they say, could unravel in as little as 6 weeks. At the same time, Sheinbaum's approval rating shoots above 60% as Mexican citizens hail her refusal to capitulate. Trump thought Mexico was in the bag, but Sheinbaum won't give in, read one paraphrased headline from Mexican media outlets. The result? A fervor of national pride. Fear in U.S. industries grows just as fast. Could American automakers withstand an embargo on parts essential to building next-generation vehicles? Or is a $100 billion economic quake about to slam the U.S. heartland?
Meanwhile, America's northern neighbor quietly joins this perfect storm. Canadian leaders announced plans to unveil retaliatory tariffs on April 2nd, leveraging their massive $900 billion trade relationship with the US. Observers note, if Mexico and Canada coordinate their responses, Trump faces a double-barreled threat. The Ottawa administration, in a paraphrased statement, claims, "This situation strengthens our position." Canada's strategy appears two-pronged. Not only does it impose a 10% tariff on energy exports destined for the US, but certain industries like potash and lumber face a stifling 25%. One official source was quoted as saying, if the US faces a bilateral retaliation, it could be pulled back to the bargaining table. Will Canada's threat become the final straw that forces the White House to reconsider? Or will Trump, known for his combative grit, double down again? The implications stretch beyond mere numbers on a balance sheet. A sense of siege grows in Washington, where some political insiders whisper about the disastrous optics of grocery store shelves going bare while gas prices spike. Yet supporters of Trump's America First approach insist that short-term pain is necessary to secure a more balanced trade relationship. Rhetorical question. Is a new era of protectionism truly the path to prosperity, or are we courting economic self-destruction from both directions? Deep in the heart of this tussle lies the automotive industry, where electric vehicles stand as both the future and the prime battlefield. U.S. automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla rely on a steady stream of parts, from specialized semiconductors to lightweight chassis components. Now, with tariffs threatening to choke this supply, entire production lines hang in the balance. In March 6th updates, the White House scrambled to adjust the tariffs slightly, hoping to minimize shock to automakers. But is it enough? Electric vehicle component exports from Mexico to the US grew 40% last year. According to multiple industry sources, those parts are among Shinbal's top targets if a full-scale retaliatory strike occurs. Could we see the transition to cleaner, greener cars slow to a crawl because of border tensions? Environmental advocates sound the alarm. They fear political grandstanding may cripple the rapid shift away from fossil fuels. On the manufacturing floor, workers dread layoffs if factories can't keep pace with rising costs. Picture a row of half-empty shelves in your local produce aisle. Beans, peppers, avocados, the staples that keep countless American families fed, suddenly overpriced or out of stock. That's the scenario if Mexico follows through on restricting or heavily taxing its agricultural exports. According to recent figures, over $35 billion in fruits, vegetables, and other farm goods travel north each year. Shinbal's unmistakable threat echoes, "We are ready to do damage." That bold vow fuels anxiety across U.S. households. Families fear that basic pantry items, once cheaply available, will soon bear eye-popping price hikes. Farmers and small businesses in America brace for chaos too. A potential wave of layoffs could hit certain states if they can't sell their products to Mexico or buy vital inputs at reasonable prices.
It's tough because within agriculture, we essentially get one chance a year to raise a crop and market that crop and sell that crop.
Could grocery aisles run empty overnight? Or will domestic producers rush to fill the gap? These unsettling possibilities create an atmosphere of dread for shoppers already grappling with inflation on essentials, prompting many to ask, did America First inadvertently push American consumers to the brink? While many in the U.S. grumble about rising costs, President Claudia Sheinbaum revels in her status as Mexico's newest national icon. Polls show her approval rating topping 60%, a surge driven by citizens who feel she's standing tall against a traditionally dominant American partner. One paraphrased sentiment from Mexican media states, Trump thought Mexico was in the bag, but Sheinbaum won't give in. For a country long overshadowed in the North American power equation, Sheinbaum's uncompromising style is a jolt of patriotic adrenaline. On the U.S. side, Trump's famous bravado was once cheered by supporters who wanted stricter policies on immigration and trade. But now, as these tariffs bite into everyday budgets, murmurs of discontent creep through the electorate.
Sale, we're trying to head to those stores to see if we can get them at a more reasonable price.
Could ballooning grocery bills sour the mood among swing state voters in the next election cycle? America First once resonated as a clarion call of strength. But ironically, if domestic producers can't keep up, or if vital industries falter, that slogan might morph into a political liability. Is the White House prepared to stake its political capital on a protracted fight with two key allies? Behind closed doors, officials in Ottawa and Mexico City sense they may never have a better shot at forcing concessions from Washington. Rumors swirl of a back-channel dialogue between Canada and Mexico, strategizing a united front. If the U.S. faces bilateral retaliation, it could be pulled back to the bargaining table, said one source close to Ottawa. Shinball and Canadian leaders appear to share a common cause. Each has been bruised by what they call Trump's bullying approach. From the U.S. perspective, simultaneously battling tariffs on two fronts is a nightmare scenario.
Just at the end of the year, I make $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 less for my family, or we have to pass it on to our customers, which when customers see a higher price, then sales typically go down. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
A staggering $1.7 trillion in total cross-border trade with Mexico and Canada stands in jeopardy if both neighbors coordinate. Will these two countries seize the moment to demand entirely new trade terms? Is the White House prepared for a standoff that could rewrite the power dynamics in North America? This development places Washington policymakers on edge. For years, the U.S. loomed as the dominant figure in continental economics. Now, with the threat of embargoes and skyrocketing consumer prices, the White House faces a real question. Does America have the leverage it used to, or are Canada and Mexico about to prove otherwise? As April 2nd and 3rd rapidly approach, dates when both neighbors promise definitive tariff announcements and implementations, advisors in the White House scramble to find a path forward. Some caution the president about potential backlash if consumer prices surge too quickly. Others nod to Trump's history of last-minute deals, whispering, "He's a bully, but he likes to make a deal under pressure." The tension is almost palpable. One final phone call, one emergency negotiation, one grand press conference could diffuse this crisis or intensify it beyond repair. Will the administration blink first, perhaps by offering fresh concessions or a temporary rollback of the tariffs? Or will Shinball and Canadian leaders see no reason to yield, pressing for a historic realignment of trade relationships in North America? The specter of irreparable damage looms large. At stake, a possible $100 billion blow to the U.S. economy, fractured alliances on the continent, and a short-term spike in household costs that could anger tens of millions of American voters. Everything hinges on those announcements slated for April 2nd and 3rd. Experts call this the perfect storm, a compressed timeline with sky-high stakes ignited by leadership personalities that appear unwilling to compromise. If both Mexico and Canada slam the door simultaneously, we could witness the swift escalation of a trade war that redefines North American economics for a generation. Alternatively, in one master stroke, Trump might surprise everyone, either reversing the tariffs on the edge of catastrophe or doubling down, inciting Shinball to launch the promised retaliatory missile of economic measures. Suspense hangs in the air like a thundercloud ready to burst. After weeks of tough talk and strategic jousting, the moment of truth is at hand. Will we see a last-minute handshake that saves the continent from crippling financial shock? Or will we witness the dawn of a new era of economic conflict with no winners in sight? In an ironic twist, the same America First stance, meant to protect U.S. jobs, could amplify inflationary pressures and push businesses to the brink. Meanwhile, Mexican goods, once welcomed as cheap labor solutions, are vilified under new restrictions that hit both consumers and corporations alike. And if Canada joins forces with Mexico in retaliation, the question becomes, can Trump handle a two-front trade war halfway through his term? A landscape defined by unpredictability emerges, where everyday people nervously await the next headline to see if their paychecks, purchases, and pantries remain safe. As the deadlines close in and cross-border tensions rise to a boil, one final question reverberates. In a high-stakes game of brinkmanship, whose resolve will crumble first? The world watches and the clock ticks.